What's up, dude?
Hi, man. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, good. I like the stash, man. It's impressive. It's kind of like an Asian stash. Is that the goal?
No, really, it was just something different.
Okay.
I just tried to be a little bit off.
Well, I think that's my favorite thing about you, man. You're not afraid to be different.
I just like to stand out. Someone said it was an anti-Hitler.
Okay.
That,
Yeah, yes, it's opposite. Yeah.
the part of it going out, and I'm just out here just.
Well, if you're going to be anti anything,
I was like, I said, if I went any further out on this,
right?
I'm really pushing the edge, because then there's hardly any hair.
Right.
Even work with. And it's like, how much risk am I willing to take on that?
I mean, if you're going to be anti anything, anti Hitler's a good place to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what about them Asian dudes, man, like Confucius and stuff? They were wise. Maybe that'll represent some kind of ancient Chinese wisdom or something.
I don't know if it goes that deep, but I do attribute everything in my life as a sign. So even when it comes to my hairstyle, what I feel like that I should do with my facial hair, it all comes from a place of a meditative state, breathing, centering myself, trying to maintain a sense of stillness, and also separate my conscience from my body and be able to identify that in a quiet space. And so when I'm able to achieve that, it opens up a place to where I can have some sort of what maybe you would call prayer, where you have your direct communication with Jesus. That's where I have my direct communication with my higher power. Everything that I know or what I decide comes from there. And it also gives me a place to understand where my ego is. Because sometimes the ego's good. I can have an idea out of my mind based off of emotion, something that I'm reacting to in the moment. I know that I can make decisions based off self, and I know that I can make decisions based off conscience. And sometimes the decisions that are based off of the ego and the self are good, but it's more identifiable when there is a question that is coming from self.
Do you think that the ego is spiritual, or it's of our humanness?
It's a counterbalance. So where you have your conscience and you try to seek answers from your conscience through a meditative state, that ego is a counterbalance on where you're at in your life. And it even goes to how you represent or how you feel about what things are said on places like social media.
Sure.
So if I get on social media and I'm very much an ego and I want to say something to try to get my point across, and I feel like there are motives behind it that might be a little meh, but still I still push that because that's what that platform's for. So I know that that's coming from self and ego. When I'm making decisions coming from my conscience, I'm not trying to persuade you one way or another. I'm trying to make you look at all possible outcomes that could be from the decision that you make at that point.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be a consequence.
Always.
Decisions that you make.
Yeah. Well, I like that, man. As my job as a therapist, and I say it a lot, is my job is not to tell you what to do or not to do. My job is to make you think. So I wanted to ask you, man, because obviously, man, I have great respect for your spiritual views, and especially the level and depth that you've studied and experimented and dug in and all that, man. So, I know you as a highly intelligent guy. And I know you as that, so all your beliefs didn't come from off of whims, so to speak. So as I understand you, in this spiritual enlightenment, man, is this, in a nutshell, is this deep expanse search for the truth.
Absolutely.
So how, my question is, man, and this is for me, I guess, as much as anything, how do you navigate social media when it's as far from the truth as you can get?
because when I get on social media, and that's the first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning, I can 100% guarantee you that I'm going to feel like shit. Because the very first thing that I'm going to read is going to be the biggest thing that I'm probably going to deal with in my life that day. That might be jealousy. That might be invasive thoughts of just what the enemy throws out there based off what social media puts out there. So I have to be very aware and keen of what I'm taking in first and foremost, because whenever I was a kid and I was going through the trauma that I was going through, subconsciously I was protecting myself and I never realized it.
Sure.
And then I got older, and then consciously I started traumatizing others because of just the simple fact that I didn't know any better. And now I can translate that into, if I start out with the base level of negativity and feeling like I'm coming from a fucked up place, my attitude all day is going to be fucked up.
Sure.
Or I can try to get better and I can identify that and try to get better. But if I don't continuously identify and have that self-assessment all day, when something bad does go wrong, I'm going to feel fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come from a place of, okay, why is this happening? I'm going to come from a place of reacting, because I started off reacting very first thing.
Right. Right.
There's a duality. Artemis, lay down.
Stern voice. I'm impressed.
There's a duality in life, man. And on one side, you can see that there is some fucked up shit happening. And we as humans tend to ignore that because we're afraid. We
Sure.
live in fear already.
Sure.
And ironically, we live in fear, but we tend to not even deal with the
Always self-protective, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but we don't even take care of the things that we fear. So we continuously live in this perpetual state of fear while the world just continuously gets fucked up, and no one stops and has this thought, what can I do to at least change my reality so I'm not feeding into that negativity that is already happening in the world with the message that is driven behind it that I know has some intentions and some unpure motives, and I could really seek for the truth of what's really going here and what the creator has to provide for me, and what would be the opposite of feeding into that negativity. And that would probably be just showing unconditional love and going out and doing philanthropic things, doing blessings in disguise, being this type of angel that can walk around this earth and silently just do acts of good in the intention of love. And then you see that the more that you do that, the more you put yourself in situations where people are meet or are already there, and you're like, what? And so when I realized that that was happening, I knew that when it comes to like quantum physics and like the scientific realm of what's going on in our reality, I knew that when we talk about you can't have a positive without a negative, that you truly can continuously stay in this negativity and
Sure.
have that.
Sure.
And it's very
even find comfort
in
there.
real life.
Momentary comfort, anyway.
I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but can you identify where your conscience is?
I mean, so I don't know if I can explain it. I think I have a fairly strong feel for it. So I see it as we are standing here in our humanness, in our flesh, bound by the limitations of our flesh, the level of our intelligence, the level of our education, the level of our physical talents combined with our genetics and so on and so forth. and yet our spiritual side is really unlimited. But where do the two mesh? And so I think that our consciousness lies in the relationship between that spirituality that is pure and right and good that's within us.
Do you think that your conscience is an energy? Do you think it's an energy source?
That's a great question. I mean, I could see it as that. I mean, I definitely think it has functionality, and I think one of the terms that the researchers use, man, is it quantitative? Can you measure it? And I mean, I think you can measure your conscience. So, I think it has substance. So energy is as good a way to describe that as any to me. I really think I would really come to say, man, it's truth. So what, now that's a vague freaking term, right? Truth, at least in our world as humans, it's immutable in the actual truth is immutable. It's as solid as black and white, or 2 + 2 is 4. 2 + 2 is 4, no matter what language you speak or what part of the world you're from. Even if you don't have a language, you're going to have some mechanism to count birds that you're fixing to kill, or how many baits you have left to put on your trot line, or how much corn you can eat for the rest of the week, or whatever.
Okay, so when you make a decision and you know that you made the wrong decision, do you feel something?
Absolutely.
Where do you feel that?
I feel it in an overwhelming presence, typically overwhelming, in a presence in my mind of thoughts. But I think the thoughts are generated from that conscious. And we're talking about conscious as it relates to good and bad, right or wrong, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, by the way, is this for me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Hey,
Celsius.
go lay down.
What a nice touch. Y'all come and hang out with Jordan because he takes care of you.
And I think you're going to come back in a couple weeks with Hank, and we're going to do the draft spectacular.
Oh, wow. So we're going to do a podcast of the draft?
I'm going to have another microphone, and we're just going to hang out and have a podcast.
Right on.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think we're charged with existing in a physical realm, though we are so, at least our nature, when we think of what is our nature, outside of typical survival humanness, eat, have, a place to live, and
that's physical.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So we're tasked with making that work, and how much that I'm starting to see more and more that without understanding the truth or getting closer to the truth, that you're always going to be in conflict with that. And it's really more about finding a balance or a harmony with that. I love the term, and I heard you use it so many times, and I've kind of adopted it in my own verbiage. It's just to recenter. I mean, I know that's a common term and a lot of people use it, but that's something I took from you.
Well, we take a lot of common terms and then we say it, but we never enact it. But when it becomes a habit, just like anything else, then you start to see the changes.
Sure. Well, it's trial and error, right? I mean, we have to experience the positive and the negative consequences. It's almost down to fundamental behavioral learning, right? I mean, if you stick your hand in the fire, it burns, you don't do it again. I don't know that there's any other way to do it. It's kind of what fascinates me about it all, man. You were talking about we live in fear, and I totally agree with that, man.
Fear is debilitating, and this is why.
Yeah.
Whenever I fear something, whatever I'm fearing never materializes. It's always something that is completely out of a different realm.
Unless you can predict the future, you're probably not going to be able to figure it out.
But there's intuition. So
sure.
When I have intuition, then I can take the things that I really know that are coming that could be fearful to some people's lives. But again, I don't ignore those things. I use preventative maintenance.
Well, I like that, man. But, not the intuition.
So I'm preparing.
Sure. Well, everything that I teach now in recovery is life preparedness, because the idea of creating a perfect situation, a set of perfect circumstances that are pain-free and problem-free is ridiculous and silly to begin with. Nor would we ever grow. We would stay the same, and it would suck ass. So I love to talk about that preparedness. And if I can't understand what fear is and use it to my advantage, then that's where I'll let fear overtake me. And that's something that the evil forces of the world can use against me, or that I can use against myself. And maybe that's how the evil forces manifest. I don't know.
When I was first get in recovery, I wanted things a certain way, but I couldn't let go of them.
Sure.
And so one of the things that I started to realize was I could go into these rooms and spit some fire ass words and have a female, in my inbox within a couple of days. And that became a real type of, thing in itself, because I was addicted to having somebody tell me, hey, I'm so proud of you. You're doing so good. But I was starting to realize that I was wanting these girls to tell me what my mom had never told me, because of
validation from a female.
Yes, but also very driven like my mother, and very authoritative and powerful and strong and willing to change their lives.
It's like the big book says, there's a certain sense of security in the familiar, right?
So yeah. I wanted to be sober, but I didn't want to let go of that. And then I knew there was a little voice inside of me that was like, you're never going to get better. You're never going to get better if you don't really start to become honest with yourself and the things that you bury deep.
We know that all along, don't we?
Of your conscience, yes. Yeah. And we all carry it.
Yeah.
But we never deal with it. But we have to dig it out, and we have to start to process those things if we want to start breaking the habit of being ourselves. We
have to have courage, right?
Absolutely.
So courage.
And we have to have a support system to be able to have that person to hear that. And, they talk about the 4th step and the 5th step, and that's kind of what that is. But it's not that either. It's not that, because we are afraid of talking about the things that we are most fucked up at. And that is a fear.
Sure.
And so if it's a fear, then the enemy can use that against us at any time. And that becomes an energy that we have to deal with in order to get to a positive place in our lives. And we don't even understand how to get there or why things keep happening, but we can't get past this.
We can't get past the humanness or the tangibility, right? If we want to hold on to something that we perceive as concrete, even if we know it's flawed, the line in the big book that says, even though they admit it is injurious, they can, after a time, no longer differentiate the true from the false. That's one of my most important lines to me, man. The reason that we won't let go of something is because at some level we have trust in it. Maybe we know it's flawed. Maybe we know it harms us in some ways, but at some point in time, it's benefited us, because nobody would hold on to something that had never benefited them. That's easy to walk away from.
But if it's never dealt with, it's going to reappear itself.
Sure.
And so if you've never
that fear for sure.
Truly come into a deep dive within your conscience of what that is to achieve a spiritual sense, then you can't even get past those people, those scenarios, because you haven't let it go.
I mean, that's one thing.
I'm using an I statement.
No, I get it. I agree, because to me, when I see things from a 30,000 foot view anyway. I'm less detail oriented and more visionary oriented, so I have to see the whole of something as it unfolds and understand what it's trying to accomplish, right? Or I can't invest myself in it. When I think about the steps themselves, I just see them as a systematic process to achieve that spiritual connection. The idea that it's just to stop drinking or drugging or whatever is so mute, in my opinion. And once I discovered that, that's when I started believing in the steps. As I call it, a transformation, man. The caterpillar. He. There's nothing when you look at that caterpillar that speaks butterfly. Nothing. Yet everything that he needs to be a butterfly is in there. And he goes in and he metamorphosizes inside his little cocoon and he comes out a butterfly. But he has to go through that pain and that change to get there. And we're so afraid of that pain and that change. We're the caterpillar that won't let go of it.
So if you can become a caterpillar, essentially you can graduate from the steps.
Well, I mean, I think the steps are just a mechanism to achieve the spiritual connection that you need. It's up to you to further that.
Well, if you go balls deep into the steps and really, so like, for instance, if I am some type of human that has a dark secret in my closet that my family doesn't know, and I continue to live with the secret, and then I work the steps, but I still don't deal with the secret, you're going to have to redo the steps. You're not going to graduate.
You didn't do
from the steps, and
you're
wasting people's time.
Right.
And that's why I think a lot of people are in, and you got to do something different because you're replacing one thing for another. And the people that are still in the rooms 30 to 45 years later, man, also don't have families mostly. And I don't think that they really found their way because they could never really dig deep with what was going on in their life to graduate from those steps. And I only say that, man, because it starts with step one in powerlessness. And if you truly admit step one in powerlessness, you have to also admit that you're powerless over going to meetings. You're powerless over working with sponsees. You're powerless over continuously doing the steps because there's somebody out there that might want your time or might want to grow with you and do something more with you, but you can't see the forest for the trees.
I definitely think AA is full of those people, just like church is full of those people, just like the intellectual world.
Because it's a spiritual program. Absolutely. And spiritually, we are supposed to evolve and grow.
Sure.
And you can just see the lack of growth on people if you're intuitive enough to walk this planet and understand people's body language and then their voice and how they project from that body language.
Right.
Because mostly this is supposed to be coming from the conscience. And if your body language is telling me different than what I'm supposed to be reading from your soul, I'm able to pick up on that.
Well, because if you're going to truly get in touch with your inner peace and your spirituality in the level and the realms that we're talking about, you have to let go of self. You have to let go of the things that you trusted that are tangible, that are fallible. Because how could something that's fallible, that could be destroyed, be absolute truth? It's temporary. It's temporal. I couldn't invest myself, in the people that come to say, well, you can invest yourself in a doorknob or some bullshit like that. And look, man, I get their limits. And if that works for them to get them clean and sober, more power to them. But you're never going to achieve that level of spirituality that you're trying to get because, I think it really all comes down to trust. And that's why the truth is so important, because the truth is so absolute. Okay, and we start putting trust in a million different things as we grow up, and we can't help it. I mean, we have to trust that our car is going to make it to the next destination and we're not going to get run over. And we have to trust that the druggist puts the right pills in the bottle and that we take and all that. But when it comes to a level of spiritual connection, which, man, I'll step out and say, and I've said it before, man, to me, it's the spirit, it's love. It's the connection of love, the true connection of unconditional love. However, we do have, no matter how spiritual we become, as long as we're alive in this body, we are bound by some of those rules. We still have to eat, we still have to sleep, we still have to shit, those kind of things. Notice how I worked in the shit in the conversation.
Well,
I'm really proud of that.
You'll shit anywhere.
And this is true, man. Shitting's part of life, right?
You might be pooping now.
I mean, you never know. You got any toilet paper?
Yeah, I got wet wipes.
Nice.
No bidet. Not yet.
So in that, so as that part of us that's our conscious that we started out talking about, it's very aware of the truth. And so it's like when we put all of our trust in our ride or die. Okay, well, that's neat and great as long as our ride or dies stays with us and doesn't die, and that they continue to.
They're on the same frequency.
Thank you. I mean, there's so many variables that's probably going to change pretty rapidly, pretty quick. Oh man, I fucked up something. Tax.
I didn't want the scoreboard to be a distraction, but here we are.
We can see what this damn scoreboard when we're talking about this beautiful shit. I don't know whether we can help them anyway. As you start to understand the futility of relying upon something that can be taken away from you, the ability to trust that is really not there. Oh, we trust it to a certain level and a certain extent. And I think as long as we can continue to only trust it at that extent, it serves a purpose very well to us. But when we're talking about spiritual enlightenment, let's face it, no matter how much of it we understand today, me and you, there's way more to it than what we can understand because we don't have the brain power for it.
Right.
So we know that, and some level our consciousness knows that. The ultimate trust has to be omnipotent. The ultimate trust has to be eternal and unbendable, just like the love that we seek has to be unconditional. But I'm starting to get this belief that love is not actually love unless it's truly unconditional.
Love is the Christ consciousness. And the Christ consciousness is completely different than doctrine, because the Christ consciousness is spiritual, and it comes from within, man.
Yeah, you just have it.
You have to accept it.
True.
You have to be willing to bring that on.
True.
And there's rules when that happens. Bad happens when you bring that on, because you can't even understand what the cross consciousness would be without bad. And if you do have the cross consciousness and you're connected and nothing's bad, then that means that you're truly believing and trusting in the people around you that also have that cross consciousness on that same frequency, so you don't have to tempt evil, because not everybody has to go through trauma. Not everybody has to feel bad. Some people do, because some people are called, some people are anointed, and in that anointment, there's hurt, there's pain, there's a perpetual fear of I might die for this cause, because evil also knows who I am. And that cross consciousness dwells within the Christian church. It dwells within the synagogues. It dwells in the most southern tips of Australia and the most dire place in this world, because the cross consciousness, who was Jesus, he was unconditional love. He prayed over everybody, and it didn't matter who you were.
Correct.
And people forget that.
Sure.
And people don't act like
look at that and realize that's what was real.
Mm-hmm. When we can identify that the cross conscious is not perfect, because we're not perfect, but the cross consciousness brings us to a place of spirituality where we know that everything had to happen for a reason. And now the reason is to help your brothers and the people that you love around you get there and achieve that as well. And I think that Bill W. had the cross consciousness. And I think that AA started off with the foundation of unconditional love, and the original message was that. But just like anything else, the telephone game happens.
Sure.
History tends to repeat itself, but it also tends to repeat itself for the right reasons too. And sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees because we're too busy trying to prove our own point and be more right than that other person. Where it's just like, just come here and talk to me and have a conversation with me where you can understand that you're just as right as I am in a lot of things. But it's our attitude and how we carry ourselves towards those things and towards those goals, and our motives and our intentions behind those things and behind those goals of what we're going to receive from that blessing.
Sure. Get out what you put into it.
Wolf in sheep's clothing. I had a beautiful marriage. I loved my marriage. I loved the tenacity of it. I loved the risk that was involved because I'm an alcoholic. I love everything that I did to create my reality to be safe for me in that moment from losing the people that were closest to me while being sober. And I found solace and solitude in a human that loved me in that moment. But we grow.
Sure.
And then sometimes those people realize that they can get more for you, that if kindness for weakness type thing. And then God tells you, you have to let those things go. And that's how, like, everything is a learning lesson. And I can attribute it back to why things happen and why I felt the way that I did, because none of it would have happened to get to this point right now in my spirituality. Because at 2 or 3:30 in the morning, I want to call a girl. I want to reach out. I want to fuck something. But I know that just that thought in itself, that seed in itself, once acted upon in the slightest form, the slightest, can spiral me out of control. So I have to act in defiance of that. And then when I do, my conscience is pleased. And then when it's pleased, then I can separate what I'm feeling in my body from what I'm feeling spiritually.
Well, your conscience wants you to rely on it. It's been trying to tell you all along what was good and what was bad, and you didn't listen, or I didn't listen, or we didn't listen. And if you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and jump on a hookup site and grab somebody, you settled for instant gratification.
You got a hit of heroin.
Come on, exactly, a dopamine hit.
But it might have had fentanyl in it.
Dopamine might have. Dopamine's beautiful
and that can,
in the moment, and it's very important to keep us physically alive, but it doesn't have any bearing on our spirituality. That our spirituality has to be organic. If it's not organic, then it's not real. It's created. It's what do they call it? Synthetic. It's because it's either the truth has been the truth from the beginning of time. If you can create it now, then how was it true before? You know what I mean? I mean, it can't be very.
Then your path becomes clear. Which is what I think you're trying to get to. You start to realize that everything,
because you don't feel that negative energy that pulls on you because you violated the truth that you know to be the truth. You settled for something that was not love. It's like the cheating husband or whatever, man. He's got a good thing, but he screws it up because he wants instant gratification and thinks that's going to fix the way he feels in a given moment, only to find out that he's going to be, it nearly destroys him for men.
I have an honest question. Let's do it.
Careful, my friend.
Do you think that voting for Trump's going to fuck with your spirituality?
Oh, man, that's a deep one. I think that if I vote for Trump, I'm going to have a lot of issues that I don't like. And if I voted for somebody else, I'm going to have a lot of issues. So it comes down to this incredible moral dilemma of which one do I think is the most. If I just judged off of which one I think is the most immoral, I mean, I'm not necessarily wanting to say that's a terrible way to judge or to pick. I mean, it's yours to pick whatever you think you can live with when you do it. I think that the job of leadership doesn't have the luxury of being able to please everybody, nor does it have the luxury of falling in line with everybody's morality. And so it becomes this dilemma of two different sides deciding this is my morals when they're better than your morals. And it just comes down to this silliness that we fight over, and we see it, all today. And I don't think people stop and think for themselves what the job of a president or a leader is supposed to be. And so, in that regard, when I take a look at it, I try to see people's motives, man. My one of my fundamental truths is, how do I know who to trust? Because nobody's 100% trustworthy, right? Not me, not you, not anybody. Simply because we might not even know the answer, and that makes us untrustworthy right there. And so I start thinking, who do I trust? And I watch actions, man, and I try to make the best decision I can out of that. And I think the secret is not to be so caught up in, did you get that decision right or wrong? It's as much as it is for me to learn from a decision, and try to make a better decision next time. Because I'm not going to go way off deep into it, man, but I've gone back and forth on Trump since the beginning. And I started out really loving the guy, thinking, okay, he's not a politician. And that appealed to me, that he wasn't going to be bought into the ugliness that is politics, and that's jockeying for power and squeezing each other to get what vote we want, or threatening us to manipulate and get life the way we want to. They're manipulating at that top level, just like we manipulated on the playground. Everybody knows that. That's not anything, big news flash to anybody. And so I thought Trump would be different. And then I thought Trump did some pretty good things when he got elected. Of course, I hated his arrogance. Of course, I hated his brashness. But the thing I hated most about, I don't care. It's his right to be immoral, but I needed him to be a leader. And I don't think he ever stepped up. He just kept pushing his way, and it was great for the economy, but it divided the fuck out of our country. Why would you not stop and try to stop that? And I'll go back to Obama on that. I got a lot. There's some things I like about Obama, but he had a chance to be that one guy that could unite this country. And I didn't see him stand up there and try to do it. Nor did I see Biden try to stand up there and try to do it. And I'm dreaming of somebody to step up there and try to unite us and get us back together, because as long as we stand here and bicker at each other, it's just like any other argument, man. It's pointless and fruitless.
You feel like that you only have to choose between two?
I mean, in realistic terms, I think I have to separate the what I think about morality and right or wrong enough to make the best choice. And I can go vote for somebody that I think's wonderful, and I can feel good about myself. But is that what was best for the overall good of mankind? Because I do think that we have a responsibility to consider that as well, man. Think about the survival things that are built into us, man. First off, we are very much a social creature. We're built for connection, man. That's the fundamental humanness. That's what makes us different than animals. That's the one piece that we have beyond an animal. And animals are even social for protective reasons. I feel responsible to make up the best decision for the greater good. I got grandkids coming along. I've got, your grandkids that I care about. Let me say it like this, man. I mean, if we got invaded by a country and we didn't necessarily like what our American stance was, but these people were killing all of our American friends and family, who would you fight for?
It's based off of the decision and the acknowledgement that right now it's fucked up. And what is it that they don't have? Because we can say there's something missing. Why do you have to put CGI AI people in your crowd? Why do you have to continuously go at a certain class or race or make it about a certain issue when there's other issues that are really happening that we just tend to ignore.
Absolutely. That's where I think we fall into that trap when we start worrying about, we want to get it right. We want to be right instead of get it right. Or we want to just, first of all, back to my question about loyalty, I'm not trying to say one way or the other. I mean, I happen to feel like I'm a very non-judgmental person. I don't care who you are. I'll help anybody. So I say that to quantify the fact that it's not an issue about that. I'm just using that as an example of, we have different things, man. I mean, if it came down to you having to make the decision to watch baseball or football, you have to choose one or the other. That's a simplistic view and silly in a lot of ways, but
it is, because that doesn't affect what my children.
Well, I'm not trying to go there so much as I'm talking about the individuality of understanding where you should control, where does your right and wrong come from, and where does your spiritual connection come from? Because if I'm two different things, then I can be in conflict with each other, and that creates cognitive dissonance. But am I loyal to being in Texas? If Texas secedes from the United States of America, do I go with Texas or do I go with the United States? How do you answer that question? And it goes even bigger all the way up to, man, and the only thing that I can do and try to stay true to myself and true to my conscience is try to understand what is right or wrong and be loyal to right or wrong.
If there's a human that is living an immoral life and is potentially hurting women and children, then we have the duty as men who protect society to call that out.
Absolutely.
And protect that. But it doesn't have, you can protect your children and the women at the same time. And I got an example for this.
I don't think you turn your back on either one of them. And that's what I'm trying to say. What is real love, man? Is real love calling you out when you do something stupid? I think it is.
Yes.
If you can't point out that I'm about to fuck up and make a mistake, then I don't need you in my life. So this whole, it goes back to like the silliness of, I'm not going to be a snitch. Okay, that's the most selfish fucking statement anybody can ever make. The only reason you don't want to be a snitch is because you don't want to get your ass beat, or you don't want somebody to look at you as a snitch. And all I'm trying to say, and I'm not, listen, be knowing to everybody listening, I'm not trying to say I got the right answers. I'm trying to say that the issues that I struggle with, or the issues, the truths that I'm trying to seek and have tried to seek for many years and have lived at the expanse of my consequences for going against what I thought and believed, were too much for whatever momentary glory I got or feeling I got in the moment, that instant gratification, right? I'm not telling you how to think. I mean, you've got to come up with your own loyalty, your own self. I'm just saying that there comes a time when we have to make a decision between one thing or the other if those two things come up in opposition. And sooner or later, they usually do. I mean, because look, man, we could pick out 100 of the coolest people that we love, and we thought like us the most, and we could take them out in the world and start a commune, and sooner or later, we're going to fight. We're going to disagree about something. So no matter how much we think we're alike, we're not going to ever agree on everything. And so I think that the idealism that we can all come up with this perfect alignment is I mean, it's beautiful. I don't deny that.
But the reason, so the only way to combat a differing opinion is through conversation.
Sure.
And it's knowledge.
Sure.
And it's understanding truths
How well is that working
from both sides. And that's where, I have a real problem with religion, because I think that Christianity is real, and I think that it is a truth. I think that practicing Islam is real, and I think it's a truth. I think Buddhism is a truth. I think Taoism is a truth. I think all of this is a truth based off of just the historical knowledge of these deities actually walking the earth. And so once I can identify that, well, then I can have a conversation with anybody. Hey, let me see your Bible, and here's my Taoism or my Tao Te Ching, and you read that, and I'm going to read your Bible, and I'm going to see where I can identify with the Tao Te Ching within your Bible.
Sure.
And so that differing of circumstances based off of our own life experiences can change our reality and even empower it more once knowledge is brought in.
I definitely think that's the goal. I think that's the direction that we should be heading and try to head for sure. Meantime, I'm tasked with surviving. You asked about the vote. I mean, in other words, we have nothing but shit to choose from right now. First, I mean, there's never going to be a politician. I'll say that's a bad word. Right now, the way politics are, there's not going to, as long as politicians can be bought, as long as it's legal to have lobbyists and politicians can get paid and they have insider knowledge and all those things, we're never going to get anybody that's not up there self-serving. Even if you go up there with the right attitude, I think a guy like you, man, that had some beautiful views could go up there with all the right attitudes and they would pull you to the side and they'd say, okay, bro, either vote my way or I'm going to kill your child. And that's horrible, but that's the reality of evil.
Well, what if I already told you that I've had that thought already? That I've already came to this idea that this message that I carry could possibly resonate to a group of individuals that will feel so against this truth because of the spiritual duality that goes on with it, that they're probably going to try to intimidate me by using my kids against me, using my worst things that I've ever done in this life against me through blackmail.
Sure.
That's why I live a very open door life.
Right.
That's why I'm very big on authenticity, because my information is going to get into the wrong hands. And they're going to pick me apart.
There's always going to be
because of who I am.
Always going to be opposition.
Prepared for it.
No matter what. So
I understand where you're coming from, because you said, am I willing to have this truth in order for the possibility of somebody to threaten my children's life?
Either you are or you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's a decision for you to make. I can't make that, man. I can judge you by it if I want to, or think, man, that Jordan, he's really fucked up. That doesn't serve me any purpose either. That clouds my mind and my judgment, and I start trying to justify why I judged you, and I start drifting further and further away in this fucked up attempt to validate myself. And that's why I love the idea of to thine own self be true, but only if you're being honest and trying to get to thine own self be true. And my point comes down.
Wait, you
cannot pick my loyalty. You can't. And I can't pick yours. But you do have to answer to your loyalty. And all I'm saying is, whichever religion or non-religion, or whichever way you choose to believe, be true to that. Don't, I mean, you pick, why you do what you do. If you just took the truth as a straight line and you had to go, the better you could stay on that straight line, walking down that straight line, the purer, the smoother, the better everything can be. But life knocks us off that line, or the wind blows us off that line, or the line gets blurry, or whatever. All that's the things that evil has created in the world or caused in the world.
Yes.
And so it makes it more difficult for us because we can be tempted. We can be pulled in opposite directions.
We have free will.
Absolutely. We have free will. And that's the difference. And so we have free will to decide what we think is morally right and morally wrong. And at the end of the day, you need to be honest. We have to be honest with ourselves and go, okay, what can we live with? Because I think for me, I have to try to be as loyal to what I believe about the truth and right or wrong as I can. And then I have to be man enough to make a decision and go with it, and then go, okay, based off of how I feel, and now, was I right or was I wrong? And if I spend the next 20 years second guessing that decision, then I was probably wrong. And so, we're never going to reach the point where we get it right every time.
So you don't think do you think that we could get to a point of decision making based off of a direct connection from Christ consciousness?
I wish we could.
You wish you don't do
If everybody, not as long as we're not as long as
individually.
I mean, I think we can get closer and closer and closer, sure, but we still are bound by human temptation and human reasoning.
It's a baseline, and so you can drift away from it,
Sure.
just like anything else.
And you can get back to it.
Once you can get back to it.
And I think that's the goal. We're never going to get on that line and stay on that line 100% forever.
What if you were always on it though?
I mean, man, you're a better man than me.
You just don't. You don't understand, man, because your life experience helped me in my journey. Even in your most fucked up days that you felt fucked up because that was ego and self. But just the experience in milliseconds made it to where this is achievable. And that comes directly from the Creator putting you in my path and where you went from your surrender. And so you have to understand that you've been there the whole time, just like you said, but evil can pull us away. But as long as we already have it, it's there. And the reason that we know that it's there is because you said it yourself. I know that I have it, but I know that I'm human. There's times that you act in it and you don't even know it.
Well, I mean, I can agree with all that, man. I mean, the truth is always there, and my need to be there and my efforts to be there can always be there. I just don't think that, I mean, I don't have any way, I mean, as long as somebody can threaten us or hurt us to cause us to do something else, which comes because we're in the flesh, right? We couldn't feel
fear.
It is absolutely, as long as we have fear, then we can be manipulated.
But we can identify that we have fear.
And that's the challenge right there, that we take that mistake.
What emotion am I feeling right now? That's fear. Okay, so now that I'm in fear, what can I do to go from that? And what would be the opposite of that? And this is a self-assessment that I do. And then from there, I can go away from that. All right. But it's a very, when we talk about having conversations and the voices in our head, everybody has them. But what are we letting it project into our minds? But it's also what we take in. But it's also what we identify as fear and the things that we fear the most and how we let that perpetuate our life. So continue with the fear. Because if we continue, if I think I can't go outside in the dark, I can't walk outside in the dark and go put my dogs out because I'm afraid of skunks. I'm going to always stay inside and let my dog shit and piss in my house because I have this fear of skunks.
People do that.
And
Howard Hughes died in a stainless steel room.
If I just took that fear and thought, well, that is fear and it's making me feel like shit, and there's literal shit all over my house, which is a sign from God that you're living in filth based off of fear. So that right there is God telling you, hey, wake up, because there's shit everywhere and you're living in filth and you can't be healthy. Pull away from that fear, and what do? You let your dogs go outside and you realize that, hey, not only is there not a skunk right out here, but there's trees and there's grass out here and things are growing and breathing and thriving. And it wasn't anything that I ever could have imagined it to be in the first place. But now that I've gotten rid of this fucked up fear of skunks, I can see not only the fact that there's not shit in my house, but there's so much life beyond that.
Before you could get over that fear, you had to have courage.
You had to identify it.
Well, you have, absolutely. And the benefit or the payoff of courage is the loss of fear. I go out there and I walk around and I don't see any skunks and I don't see any rattlesnakes, and that gives me more and more confidence. You've put your little, when your boy was little, and put him up on the refrigerator or somewhere up in there and said, "Hey man, jump to me." And he's like, "No, not doing it." Okay, well, he has a fear that you're not going to catch him. He's not going to be safe, something to that effect. And you try and you coax him and you get a little closer to finally you're just a few inches away and he just sort of steps into your hands. And his little brain says, "Okay, that worked." And you do it over and over again. And then after a while you catch, then you don't, he doesn't notice, but you back away. And then every time that you catch him, his faith grows, his courage, but it took that first leap of courage to get there. And so I don't think we can ever achieve the truth or overcoming any kind of obstacle or wrong unless we find a way to step out in courage.
Let me expand on that.
Okay.
Because the further that dad steps away, in the back of that child's mind is still that fear.
Sure.
But the courage is already there.
How good do you think
he's
he
just
feels
not
about
acting
himself?
on that fear anymore?
That's
he can identify it and realize that it's not going to paralyze him.
Yeah.
But the moment that I realize that fear can paralyze me, I become paralyzed.
Sure.
And then I completely seize up and I'll be killed.
A conscious choice.
I will physically be killed.
Oh yeah.
And that also is a sign that you can't live in fear in a primal world. Because if I do live in fear and I act off of that, you point a gun at me and
you can't let fear govern everything you do.
Exactly. But I have to, because it's kind of like, it's kind of hanging there. And I know that it's there, but it's that baseline of knowing how much courage I can achieve, because the more fear that I felt, the more courage that I can manifest, because it's quantum.
I won't argue with that. I can appreciate that completely. All I'm saying is there's not, as long as we are bound by a world where there is danger, where there is evil, because if there wasn't, then there would be no fear.
But we can change that.
Well, we can do our best, and we change a lot of it. Sure,
it's going to have to change anyways. We're not going to go to the fourth.
Eliminate evil.
You talk about the fourth dimension. No, we have
I don't
to
talk about the fourth dimension the way everybody else talks about the fourth dimension.
But
it's just my.
You told me that I needed to find out for myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. But you understand the fourth dimension, though, even though it might be different. Your version of the fourth dimension is something that I've gone off of the definition of what I've needed to achieve anyways. So you can't negate your truth to not be part of what I believe.
Not trying to.
I know, but I'm just saying your fourth dimension idea really pushed me to what I needed to understand the fourth dimension to be in the first place. And that's partly a collective conscience, and that's me being on the same frequency as you. Regardless if we agree on everything, we still come to the space level that I fucking love you no matter what, and this is unconditional, and that one day we're going to be in the same realm beyond this life because we carried the same message, and we're going to be like, fuck, why did we waste all that time disagreeing in the first place? Because we were already there in the collective.
Because if we don't disagree, we don't get to the truth.
But we all of us, as every human on this planet, is going to have an experience, a spiritual experience where it's unconditional love for us to ever stop wars, for us to ever stop living in poverty. And it starts right here with us in these conversations.
All we can do is the best we can do.
Yes.
But we owe it to the world and to the universe to do our best. That means a constant keeping ourselves as healthy as we can in every regard, spiritually, emotionally, physically. It requires us to step out in courage, even when we don't to, the courage to call up and ask somebody to donate to Breakout. It's not necessarily something that I feel comfortable doing or enjoy doing, but I'm willing to do it and step out in courage because it's for the greater good. That's a big enough reason for me to face my fears versus if it's just me alone, fuck it, I'll do without the money. So I had to come to the terms that the world's going to come at me. There's going to be bad. There's going to be catastrophe. There's going to be war. There's going to be ugly things. As long as we're on this planet in a physical sense, that stuff's going to happen. Now, our job is to minimize it, change it. Hopefully, it would be beautiful if we could eliminate it. And we should try. It's like,
Hold on.
One good way to say,
why do you need but the main reason you need donations for Breakout is because you unconditionally love kids. It doesn't matter if the kid comes from a 7-figure home or a 3-figure home that's living on food stamps and is strung out on drugs and meth, and it's an abusive home. You unconditionally love the troubled kid, and it takes donations in a world like this to really give them hope and help. So
right.
The base foundation is unconditional love.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're charged with becoming as unconditional as we can possibly come. Unconditional love. That's where we start to lose judgment and hatred, and all that comes from fear. If we could insecurity. Yeah, that's a fear, man. A fear that nobody's going to love me, a fear that we're not worthy of love, that we're not worthy of connection. But if you want, the only way you can truly have connection is to be vulnerable. You have to put yourself out there. And if I can't, if there was nothing to be afraid of, then vulnerability wouldn't be necessary. Bravery and courage wouldn't be necessary. But to me, man, the ultimate, or one of the ultimate things that we're charged with in the spiritual realm in love is total trust. Unconditional love would be unconditional trust. And the only way that we can do trust is to step out and try it. It's the scripture that says faith without works is dead. There's not a truer statement in the Bible, man. If you don't step out and put it to the test, then you don't have any faith. If you tell me, man, I can get on top of this house and fly, you can say that 85 million times, but if you don't get up there and jump off this house, it don't mean shit to me. And so I think it's beautiful to me, man, and what I've discovered for myself, and I don't necessarily always live by it because I get petty and selfish all the time. But if I can identify my fears and face them, then I can overcome those fears that are limiting me to do other things, because fear is always going to hold us back, right? It's going to keep us from going outside or whatever, proverbially it's going to hold us back to. And so if I don't identify the fear and use the courage, then I'm not going to grow. And so therefore fear and evil and all the ugliness, as long as we're in this body tasked by this, man, it has to be there, or there's no fight to fight. If everything was wonderful, then we wouldn't have disagreements. There wouldn't even be right or wrong. There would just be right. And would we even know what was good? I have questions in my mind about going to heaven and everything being perfect. Because this is a crazy example, man. You'll like this because it's a baseball reference. I'm thinking, okay, heaven's going to be wonderful, right? Whatever heaven means to you, I'm just proverbially talking about this wonderful place that we go to after we die and everything's hunky dory. Okay. I dream about it and there's no more pain, no more suffering and all those beautiful things. Okay. Let's say that me and you love baseball and we go to heaven and we want to play baseball and we play in a game against each other. One of us has got to lose. So does that mean that losing is this negative thing? Or if it's merely just the opposite of winning to teach us that winning's okay? And I'm not saying I got the answer to this. I'm saying it's a question that I have about heaven, because if there's nothing to compare to, how will we even know?
When you lose in life, we can directly reflect that to whatever team we tend to pull for. And so when they lose, it comes from that same feeling of being rejected from the job, or being broken up with, or losing something that losing a bet, or we can attribute to the same things as the team losing. But the beautiful part of losing is identifying the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities that caused us to lose in the first place.
Sure.
So it's very alpha of us to become vulnerable. It's very alpha of us to cry in front of our brothers and
Only the strongest can do it.
expose our weaknesses.
You bet.
So our losses become our strengths.
We learn more from losses than we do from winning.
And part of that loss is part of that suffering.
So loss and suffering become necessary. Meaning and suffering, right?
In order to live a spiritually fruitful life. That's why trauma happened to me. I had to lose first.
Trauma happening to you made you a better man in this world.
I started losing at 6 years old, man. And like, God's also shown me, like, this is where the unconditional love for this trauma happens. Is I was forced into an adult relationship at 6 years old. So consciously, I'm a kid. I have to be a kid. I have to have this secret. This guy is amazing. And we go places and we do things. So consciously, I'm having a great time. Subconsciously, I'm in a very, very dangerous situation with an adult trying to have an adult relationship with adult themes and adult thinking with a child. And subconsciously, I couldn't identify that then. But through my experience and my knowledge now, I was maturing at a very, very much younger age than most other people, just from the energy of the enemy and of hate being inflicted on my soul at such a young age. But when I accepted the Christ consciousness, that's only when it started happening, right?
And then you lost me on the when you accept,
because I accepted Jesus as my Christ and Lord and Savior at 6, and I attribute that moment to actually accepting the Christ consciousness.
The enemy wanted to squash that.
That's when because when I opened that portal to let that Christ consciousness in, I let everything in at that point.
I don't know. I'll have to think about that one a little bit, man. I have some
and we could talk about it too, because like I can directly reflect the instances that have happened in my life with why I am the way that I am now. So subconsciously, I was being taught adult themes. I was going through adult situations. I was watching John Wayne Gacy films, not knowing who John Wayne Gacy was, only to grow up and realize that John Wayne Gacy sodomized and murdered a bunch of little boys. And this is what this guy was pretty much doing with me, except obviously I'm here to speak about it, so I wasn't killed. But subconsciously, I had to have that thought or that feeling that I might die. So that suffering, that real fight that I never ever even feared at that point was already being fought. And it was making me spiritually stronger for the things that are to come.
And I definitely agree with the making you spiritually stronger part, 100%. So let me ask you this, man. You've experienced the life that you've experienced, addiction, trauma, marriages, all the above. Gone through quite a bit, actually. It's quite impressive that you.
I've also lived a very immoral life.
Sure. I mean, you stepped out there and trusted instant gratification and your pleasing self.
Very much a product of the world.
Sure. So you've gone through all that you've gone to reach the point that you are sitting here today talking to me, right? And you are, in fact, a summation of every bit of that. And in theory, if any one of those major events didn't happen, we might not be sitting here today, and you definitely wouldn't be exactly the same as you are. So then can you if you find meaning in suffering, then can you really go back and just say that suffering the whole thing was just a terrible thing that happened to you, or was it damn fortuitous that it happened to you because it made you a better and stronger person? And I'm not saying it should or shouldn't either way. I just think that's a question that we have to start quantifying for ourselves, because we tend to try to judge everything as good or bad. And I think that we put ourselves in a hole that way, or we put ourselves in a trap, because me being an addict was horrible in so many ways that it caused so much infliction of pain and so much guilt and shame. But there's no way I'm who I am today without it.
But I don't attribute it to being good or bad these days. It was an experience that I had to have happen. So in order to
my
achieve.
Question was, man, if you had the power to go back and stop it from happening, would you stop it from happening?
Absolutely not.
So then in that sense, you recognize that it has value.
Do you think that...
I mean, it either helped you or it didn't. If it helped you, it has value, right?
Absolutely.
So if it has value, then judging it good or bad is pointless, and you judge it whether so everything becomes, what value can we take from whatever experience we have, because we don't get to choose what experiences we get. They happen. They're outside of our ability to control. So we either learn from the mistake or we repeat the mistake. And if in that sense, man, I think we have to be, it's not that those things didn't harm us or hurt us or weren't terrible, or that we shouldn't prevent those things from happening. But at the same time, once they happen, then the point of going back and saying, oh my God, that shouldn't have happened, or whatever, it's a bunch of energy going one way, when really what we need to do is figure out, okay, we're going to take this traumatic event and learn from it and grow from it. We can use that to prevent it for the next little child. We can use that to identify the type of people that do that and get them off the streets earlier in the process. And then those things become valuable, and we have to be very careful about forming what we believe about spirituality based off of a singular event or a moment in time. And so the fourth dimension to me becomes, and what I've said all along is, whatever circumstance that life comes at me with, I can accept it, deal with it, learn from it, grow from it. And I know ultimately that not only am I going to be okay, but that I'm going to be better for it.
It's called spiritual warfare for a reason.
Absolutely.
That means there's two sides.
Absolutely.
And so the spiritual is already there. So if I can already identify that the word is spiritual, and then there's warfare, then I have to understand that there's going to be both sides to this. Sure. And bombs and infliction are going to come from the enemy. Right?
That's a given.
Yeah. And we can directly attribute this to even just like, let's use Barbie and mine and Barbie's relationship for an example. And I don't talk to her, and like, it's just kind of like a wild thing that we were so profoundly in each other's lives, and then boom, gone. But she's successful. She's sober. She's killing it. I'm successful. I'm sober. I'm killing it. She found Breakout. She found Cinecore. And those were all seeds that were initially 100%. Planted from the very moment that 100%. I met her. But then I let myself and my ego and my addiction come along and let all the negativity of that evil side of the spiritual warfare play in. And then we have this real fucked up relationship. Okay? The beautiful part of that was being able to identify how fucked up it was in that moment and growing from it.
Now apply that to everything that happens on the planet.
And so so you might have a listener. I might have a listener out here that's like, well, tell me why that my baby daddy or my baby mama is cheating on me, or, making me feel like
I don't
shit.
know why.
It's because it has to happen for a reason. Either you're going to learn from this from the story that I'm telling you right now of why it happens, and you pull yourself away from it so you can grow
Well, I
spiritually.
know why it happens in theory, but I don't know why each individual does it.
Or you can continue to live in that negative perpetual state and then continue to wonder why nothing ever gets better.
Yeah.
We don't
Exactly.
all have to
learn
live
from
like
it or we
this.
don't.
Yes.
And as long as, so instead of judging ourselves or our performance against how much pain and stuff that we avoid, or trying to build a life where we never feel negativity, because that's pointless. It'd be beautiful. It could happen, but it's not going to happen. So then I have to switch gears and learn how to make the most out of the life that I get. That's our challenge as a soul. We're given the body that we're given in the place on the earth that we're given at the time frame in history that we're given. What will we do with that challenge? And we either rise to the challenge and learn from it as we go, or we stay a victim, pull up over in the corner and whine because things didn't go our way. And I think that we have to be so careful. I don't think that's hard for people to understand either, man. I mean, that's pretty simplistic in my mind. But the problem is the human side of us, the emotional side of us, likes being a victim sometimes, or celebrates the attention that we get from being the victim. And so we glorify that victimhood in certain situations.
That's ego.
Absolutely.
That's ego.
Absolutely. And so we have.
And you're like, well, I feel like shit. How did my ego do that?
We have to be careful when we start thinking about what fights to fight and what fights not to fight, and make sure that our motives for fighting that fight are right, and not so much to satisfy the way we feel in a moment. Going back to the snitch, he's doing what he's doing to make himself feel better. He don't give a fuck about you. If you go to jail, he ain't going to miss a lick of sleep. I mean, he might say, that's too bad. My homeboy went to jail. I hate that for him. Half of them people, man, they're built on this brotherhood, and some of these gangs they're going to protect. And dude, I watched it in a certain gang, and I'll keep the name out of it and be done with it. But they were supposed to protect their wives when the dude went to jail, and they're over there banging the wife.
Well, it happens in the military too. But it's also a direct reflection of the state of our society.
Our society's fucked up.
Yeah. So if there's people, and I seen this on Reddit just today. It was this nurse talking about the infidelity in between nurses. And it's like, well, if it happens there, that police officers are having infidelity. Cheating is rampant. The infatuation and the risk, the sexualizing, all of it comes from a place of negativity, because we feel like shit in the situation that we're in already, and we're subconsciously traumatizing ourselves through anxiety, that we react in a way that breeds that trauma
in the form of emotions.
And so when it comes to sex, everybody's cheating on everybody, and you're like, wow, well, it doesn't just happen here, it also happens here. And you're like, why? And it's a direct reflection of where we're at spiritually as a society.
100%.
Joe Rogan, and I find a lot of inspiration in you, Mr. Joe Rogan. I'm a big fan. I think your podcasting is way better than your comedy, but I think you're pretty good at comedy because of the Comedy Mothership. And I love the fact that you had Ari Maddie on the other day. And yeah, I'm speaking to him like he's going to hear this, but I have something to get off my chest.
I have no issues with that.
Ari Maddie was on, and he was talking about in how their society, he's from Estonia, they have saunas. They all go to the sauna. Everybody has a sauna in their house. They have saunas in the community. When they go to the sauna, they go in the sauna naked. Joe was like, "What, you go in the sauna naked?" And like, here we don't do that, man. Like, we put on bathing suits. Like, we don't make it weird. And then RMA's like, "No, we go naked." And they got into the conversation of predators being, in these bathhouses, preying on other men that are in the sauna. And Ari Matty goes into this situation where this guy was eyeballing him and he felt it and he could tell that there was red flags. And he got out of the sauna and he immediately went to the shower. And he went to a shower that was in the corner and he was bathing and he's scrubbing and he looks over and that gentleman was in a shower that was like 4 or 5 showers away, but he was going to town watching him. And Ari felt that guy sexually assaulted him. And he expressed that on Joe Rogan's podcast. And Joe Rogan's response was, "Oh, come on, man. That's not assault. Quit being a baby. Quit being a baby, bro. That's assault." And we can't belittle our brothers when our brothers feel that they've been in vulnerable situations and they feel a certain way, and then you minimize that situation. That is fucking bullshit. He was man enough to come on a well-known podcast that has millions of viewers and talk about a man that had sexually assaulted him, and he was responded with, "Quit being a baby." Being a baby is not being able to fucking talk about that shit. Being a baby is living in fear of
being judged
and being insecure and using drugs and alcohol to even not think about that potential situation of where you were assaulted in the first place. We have this idea that if another male preys on another male, that person that was preyed upon is some kind of bitch or overreacting. And if we're gonna call it how we see it, and we're gonna start holding people accountable for their infidelities and the way that they think morally or immorally, then we have to hold people accountable when someone's vulnerable with them, and then they're met with minimalization and made felt even worse for even talking about that situation in the first place. Because as a victim of pedophilia, and knowing that I was preyed upon way before I even realized it, having just the tenacity to say that is empowering. And I was offended when somebody that I look up to made him feel less than. And Joe Rogan could whoop my ass in anything. He's a black belt, and if it were to come to hand combat, I know as a human I wouldn't be able to last 5 seconds with him. But I'll tell you this much: it takes much more of an alpha male to call out where somebody that you know is much stronger than you and that can kill you and can whoop your ass, and tell them that what they're doing is fucked up.
Solid, man.
Because real leaders in this society are going to be the ones that come from a place of the intention of making everything better and everything safe, in a society where people can express themselves and feel in a way where evil doesn't even have a chance, because we're talking about these issues. Hey, Mr. Staten, I'm doing another episode of my podcast here, and I'm talking about you and the things that had happened when we were kids, when I was a kid. I bet that sucks for you when you have to hear this. I bet you'd much rather me be living in the evil and the negativity that you first introduced me to as a child. But now the ball's in my court, and you might be able to whoop me and beat me, but guess whose toes I'm stepping on now, and guess who's corner, and guess who doesn't
rising up and being a better man.
Guess who lives in fear now? Because through spirituality, God the cross
Can you trust?
consciousness.
And I think we have to trust that. We have to trust that vengeance is going to happen in the form of guilt or shame or whatever. And I think more, that's the beauty of it, man. And kudos for saying that, because I know how highly you think of Joe, man. And that's, I think that we need more people to say that, or else we're never going to find that balance that we're looking for, or even attempt to get to right or wrong, or even I can take a stance that I'm right about everything. I pretty much do that a lot of times, but I know deep down I'm not right I'm wrong a lot of times. So if I'm interested in getting it right versus proving to my ego that I was right, then I've got to be willing to hear an opposing viewpoint and not just hear it, but consider it. Because if I'm not, then what the fuck? I might as well just say, no, I'll sit at my house and we won't talk about anything. And I don't, there are answers that we're never going to have as long as we live in the flesh, man. There's spiritual answers that we're not going to know. What happens to us after we die? We're not going to know that till we fucking die. So we can have speculation and guesses and beliefs and all that's great. And if it makes you feel better about this belief, then hang on to it. Because I say all the time, man, if I didn't believe that I was going to get to see my mom again, I don't know if I want to be here. And really, the Christian Bible does not really, it's kind of an opposite of that, man. It says that we won't know each other as mother and father or husband and wife. And that scares me. And yet I really can't I kind of think, well, maybe it's not going to really be like that, I don't know, man. So I just think that it's the obligation, and this is kind of my closing point for me, man, for me, it's that pursuit of the truth, but being willing to know that I'm probably wrong and I'm probably rarely at the total truth. And the closer I get to it, the better I understand and the better I like myself and the better man I can be to impart that to other people. And so, there was a point, man, where I would argue with some of the things you said tonight. I would fight and argue with everybody. Now, man, I have to have enough humility. I don't know if anybody else will ever agree with this, but it's truth to me. I have to have enough humility to let somebody be wrong. I don't have to jump in and correct them every time, because whatever they believe, they've come to believe it, however they've gotten there. And even if I really want them to come around to my way of thinking, I need to sit and have conversations like this, not conversations where you ignorant motherfucker, that's never going to get you there. You call me an ignorant motherfucker and I'm not going to hear another word you say the rest of the night. And I watch this go down around us, man, and it breaks my fucking heart, because I don't think that as human beings, we're quite as far apart as we think we are. I've had that thought with you several times tonight, man. Clearly we have some opposing thoughts, but I think ultimately our points and our goals are pretty damn close. And what route we take to get there or whatever, we may differ on that, but I don't even think that's necessarily the important thing. I think the important thing is for me to go on my journey and make my mistakes and learn from them willingly as I go along, seek the truth more, listen to a guy like Jordan, who I happen to know is extremely intelligent, who I happen to value his opinion, if for no other reason based on that. And because he's that smart guy, I'm going to go, man, maybe I haven't seen this in the correct light. Let me back off and think about this and be knowing, man. You've had a lot of influence on me, man. I feel like I'm a much less judgmental person because of you.
Well, that's because you used to judge the absolute fuck out of me because I was doing some wild shit.
I mean, yeah, I can't totally deny that.
And
as much as I like to, I can't.
I had to be a part of your experience too. But,
well, I learned a lot from that too, man. The moments that I got ugly with you and lost my temper, which I don't care how right I was or how wrong I was, I should have never lost my temper and talked to you the way I did a couple of times. But I learned, I had to really back off, man, and start reflecting on where these feelings coming from, man, because I've never disliked you, man. That's never been a question. I've always loved you from the jump. And I've always felt like you were a super intelligent dude with some really cool viewpoints. And why was I so threatened by some of them? And I had to admit a lot of truths about myself, man. So that's the product of these conversations, man. And why, I hope that I hope that everybody on earth listens to this. And if, you know, I don't expect them to take anything I said and go, by God, that's absolutely the way life is. Because I don't know if it is or not, man. That's my experience. But I do hope that it causes them to think and seek that truth on their own, which is the foundation of everything I try to teach, man. You know, how many times did you call me and ask me a question back in those uglier days and ask me what I thought about this, that, or other? And I said, it doesn't matter what I think, man. What do you think?
Right.
Yeah.
But I hated that.
I know you did.
I wasn't. And that's the thing, man. You sell yourself way short, because I have you on the podcast. Because when I first met you, you weren't in the room yet, and I had met an individual in there that was who I thought was way on my level, just by the piercings, the facial hair, the personality. And then you walk in the room, and we start to have the meeting, and you start to share, and I'm like, I need to get to know that guy. Okay. But you looked way different than him. It's because I started to size up the spirit. I'm starting to size up your journey,
much healthier,
your path,
much more mature,
your intentions, your motives. You make mistakes that I identify in my own life of where I need to be better. Because where I am weak, you're strong.
That may be my best compliment ever, man. I mean, I'm tearing up a little, because if you can't learn from my mistakes, then my mistakes, how sad that I made those mistakes, man.
We forget when we say iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? Are we really sharpening someone's iron, or are we just keeping them in a place because we're afraid to grow?
That's a great question. That's one you better answer for yourself, or you're going to have a lot of misery going on.
Because if my motives are to keep you down, and what I say is fucking cool, I'm going to keep you where I'm at, and we're never, ever, ever going to get there. And now we can see.
Welcome to America.
But also, the example rings true, because now look at the situation we're in, just by the decision of choosing you by your spirit and your conscience and your journey that you carry, and where we're at now comparatively to the victimhood of what that other human perpetuates in society now. Everything is an issue. Everything is a problem. Woe is me.
I'm going to ask you to not, and I'm saying this in direct terms, but in general terms too, I'm going to ask you to not form your opinion or judgment of me based off of, and I'll just use this as an example, who I vote for. I want you to trust that I'm going to vote for the best choice that I can come up with based off of the knowledge and experiences I've had. And I won't stand up and say I'm right or wrong. I'm going to say I'm going to make the one that I know in that moment that I think I can live with. And whether I don't need you to agree with who I vote for, no more than I need to agree who you vote for. Don't even need to know.
Exactly. And so the question that I'd asked you was, does who you vote for affect you spiritually?
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm not voting for either of them. That's the state of our society, and we have to choose. And we think that we have to choose off of just the better judgment of some of the other topics that are being dealt, and the things that are being presented to protect us and to put us in a space economically and socially, and what's that word, where you're foreign affairs and you're safe, and we're militarized and we have great defense, and that's great and all, but eventually Rome fell. And Rome was everything. China fell, and China was everything. But the further that these dictators went along with what was going on in those empires, in those societies, you can directly reflect the spirituality of the society and the vile, immoral compass that was being perpetuated in there. And it's important to just identify that.
Sure.
I'm not here to persuade you
Sure.
any
Well,
other way or persuade.
I already think he's an arrogant piece of shit.
But I think that Kamala's not the answer either, and I don't even know if RFK is.
As he is. She's just hiding behind saying the right thing and saying things that people want to hear, which is just as evil, in my opinion. That's we know for a fact.
Well,
and not to say about Kamala, but to say that everybody up there in Washington is doing illegal and immoral things.
If Joe Biden is not making decisions because he's not mentally confident enough, then why isn't Kamala making decisions? Because Kamala's out there campaigning. So if you already know that Kamala's out here doing what she's doing, what makes you think that it's going to be different when she gets into office?
100%.
And so it has to be a change from the top down. It has to be an acknowledgement of where we go as a society. Unconditional love is just that, unconditional love. Unconditional, and that means that we can identify this, and I can forgive DJT for the things that he said, and maybe he's not in that mindset anymore.
Hope so.
And so, because unconditional love can forgive that,
or you don't, right?
Forgive that. I'm here to just make things be known and just make things beware. It's like having a torch. I have a torch, and the torch is light. But if I hold the torch right above me, the fire is going to fall on me. So I can't have it. I can't have it all.
Right.
I have to really be protective and self-aware of where I'm coming from in my own spirituality and the decision making that I'm doing.
Your own spirituality, doing it to the best of your ability. That's what I love and respect. And I think if everybody did that, man, we're not going to agree on everything, but we would be a lot better place because we would be more tolerant of each other and more willing to look at the differences and go, okay, why do we have these differences? You're a smart dude. I'm a smart dude. Why are we coming to such different conclusions? Let's hash this out and see what those conclusions, what the real answer is. Usually the truth somewhere in between anyway. And that's all I'm ever saying, man. I try to say less about that I'm right about anything except for my process.
We just did exactly what I wanted to do. And this is why this podcast was a success, because I knew just by your social media posts that if I didn't know you and I went off of some of the things that you said, I would feel a certain type of way.
I have to admit on that, man. The last couple of weeks, I've let myself say things I wish I hadn't said.
But listen, man, the difference is that I identify that there are differences, but I also know who you are as a human. And I had to have this conversation so people can know that the genuine connection of what we have goes way beyond the differing opinions of where we come from, because ultimately, you know that I'm going to protect your family if I'm put in a position that I have to, and you're going to do vice versa.
You're going to be true to your morals, and that whether I agree with your morals or not, I love. And I want to say this, man, because I have put some stuff out there on Facebook, and I swore off ever make a political post, but I don't want to be like that, man. I want you to be true. I want you to think about why you did what you did. How many times have you heard me say, man, I don't care what you believe. Just know what you believe and know why you believe it. Hey, man, I got a beautiful redheaded wife waiting at home.
Shout out Tammy.
Yeah, love that girl. Give her big props. She's a badass.
Shout out all my homies' wives for letting me hang out.
Yeah, come on, somebody.
I love you, dude.
Love you too, man.
That's a great episode.
Love it.
Let's do it again. Draft Spectacular. Andy's coming back. Hank's going to be over here. Gonna have some real guests. Come on.
Draft. Get ready.
What'd you think about this vibe, man?
The vibe of
the just the studio. How I got things set up.
I think
feel pretty good.
Very Jordan, but very comfortable, very relaxing. No threat.
It's got potential.
I think it's cool, man. I think it's very you, and I think it's very non-threatening. It's non-binary. It's very opening, and that's what I love, man. We're open to all comers. Come.
I want to talk to everybody.
Yeah, come tell me what you believe in, man. I might need to know about it. You know.
And I want you to come on at least way more often, because the conversations like this need to be had, because people that disagree also disagree with me that are listening.
Sure.
So these conversations expose those truths that can have a solution to why you might not like me because of one opinion.
Do you get much email feedback or feedback on your episodes now?
I get a lot. So for YouTube, man, YouTube is kind of difficult. But I'm averaging 60, 70 views YouTube. And that's really good for
I think that's great for
long form content. And I'm not even pushing
if they're loyal people that keep coming back. Yeah.
And I have like 5 or 6 people. But here's another thing. It's the spiritual realm, right? So there's people that are on a path of unconditional love too that reach out to me. And we compare our paths, we compare our journeys, and it's confirmation for who we are and where we're going. So those interactions just push this too. But I had a vision, man. I had a real vision from God. And in that vision, I really felt like I'd gone viral. And not only had I gone viral, but everybody knew every secret about me. And it felt profoundly real.
Cool.
And so after that experience, man, which was very, and we'll go into, I want to have that conversation with you one day. Just that experience itself of why I am the way that I am now, and how I've discovered my truth to be why it is relevant in my life. But in that experience, that vision that I had where I went viral, I was started to play with life a little bit. And you didn't know this, but 2 months later, I was on a stage doing comedy. And it was me from that vision of you can do anything in the world you really want to do. Everybody has
but an attempt to prove that to yourself.
How does my message differ now from the message that Joe Rogan pushes?
Well,
we'll see.
We need Joe Rogans and we
Absolutely.
need Jordans.
Yeah. And God showed me that. And so I just have to stay the path, man.
No, that's it. Stay the course, baby.
And I have to be authentic.
Yep.
Love you, man.
Love you too.